Purple Heart here to lead us in the pledge. I think Commander Walter Swanson and his comrades are going to lead us. If we'd all stand and face the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Swanson, would you come forward with Twinson? If you'll come forward with your other gentlemen, I have just to the dais, the microphone. I have a proclamation that y'all brought to us that it's my honor to read. And we're going to proclaim Roswell as a Purple Heart City. Whereas General George Washington on August 7th, 1782, created the Medal of Military Merit, the precursor of the current Purple Heart Medal, the oldest United States military decoration. And whereas the Congress of the United States on August 7th, 1932, and the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, authorized the current Purple Heart Medal to be awarded for wounds received in combat. And whereas the people of the city of Roswell have great admiration and the utmost gratitude for all the men and women who have selflessly served their country and this community in the armed forces, and the people of the city have shown this with the building of the Faces of War Veterans Memorial. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women from the city of Roswell who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens, and whereas many citizens of our community have earned the Purple Heart Medal as a result of being wounded while engaged in combat with an enemy force, and is considered as a meritorious act of essential service. Therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim and declare the City of Roswell is a Purple Heart City, and honor the service and sacrifice of our nation's men and women in uniform wounded or killed by the enemy while serving to protect the freedoms enjoyed by all Americans. And gentlemen, I see that do all of you wear the Purple Heart, or is it just the ones the three I see on the left?
We all do.
We all do. Well, I didn't see the third. Let's have a hand for these gentlemen. Let's have a standing ovation for these folks. I know I have some ex-military in the room. Do I have anyone else who has won this award? Well, no shame there, but we are honored by having you gentlemen. Would you like to address the council?
Mr. Mayor and the members of the City Council, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, our Chapter 576 is extremely grateful for an opportunity for you to share in declaring Roswell a Purple Heart City. And in doing so, you become the number 112th city, state, or other venue that has adopted the Purple Heart. And we thank you very much for that.
It is our honor to be the 112th, and thank you for bringing this to our attention and helping us become a Purple Heart City. One more hand for these gentlemen. Thank you. Next, we have a Boy Scout in the room. It is our practice to recognize Boy Scouts when they attend. We usually make them lead us in the pledge, but you were bumped tonight by the Purple Heart. Great. If you'll come forward and introduce yourself and tell us why you're here. If you will speak into the microphone.
I'm Luke Golden, and I'm here to complete a requirement for the Communications Merit Badge.
Well, it's good to have you here. We've got we have one Life Scout with us here tonight, Councilman Orleans. Councilman DiPolito is a Life Scout, and with the insistence of my parents, I became an Eagle Scout, so you're among good company. Let's have a hand for the Boy Scouts. Thank you, gentlemen. And the next guest I would like to introduce is Up With People. And our representative for Up With People there in town, I think she needs to tell us what's going on.
Hello, my name is Haley Lutz. I'm from Arizona, and my colleagues are Maxi Castillero from Panama and Chloe Bernier from Switzerland. And the three of us, I think, are a pretty good representation, just the three of us, for the next few weeks of how big our group is. 3 people are this international. Imagine the group of 110 young people coming into town on August 10th. We're from 22 different countries, countries like Africa, countries like Japan, China, all over the world. And we use music and volunteer service as a tool to bring the world together. And we do that every day and every week in a new city around the world. And we've been doing it since 1965. So we're really excited to come back to Roswell. The last time we were here in 2013, I was a student participant, fell so much in love with the program, I decided to work and come back. And I was lucky enough to land right back in the city that I loved so much when I was here. Was really grateful for my host family then. And of course, we're still looking for host families today, 80 more in 2 weeks, so we're trying to spread that word. But more importantly, we're really grateful for the opportunity to be in front of the City Council again and be recognized as the full force that we're excited to come into the community again and do some good work for North Fulton Community Charities.
Well, you're certainly welcome to the city of Roswell. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time Up With People has been to Roswell. I know many years ago, I served as a host family, and it was a delightful experience. And we had one of your members spend the night with us a couple of nights. And if people want to serve as a host family, who do they contact?
It's really easy. It's easier to go to upwithpeople.org/North Fulton County, and then you can follow the information there to become a host family online. But otherwise, you would reach out to my colleagues and I. My email would be HLUTZ, my first initial, my last name, at upwithpeople.org.
Well, that's great. And before you leave, I have a proclamation to read regarding Up With People Week in the city of Roswell. And whereas in 1965, Up With People was founded as a positive voice for young people and serves as an international educational and cultural program for young adults between the ages of 17 and 29 that brings people together through volunteerism and music. And whereas Up With People exemplifies the quintessential American idea that we can bring positive change and solve problems communally when we all work together. And whereas nearly 21,000 young men and women from more than 96 countries have come together in over 175 casts to deliver a common message of hope and goodwill to people around the world, and have visited more than 4,000 communities in 42 countries. And whereas Up With People has over 3 million hours of community service with 500,000 host families who have welcomed the many casts in their 50 years of history. And whereas the cast of 110 Up With People volunteers from 22 countries will be staying with 50 host families in North Fulton County this week as they volunteer their time through local humanitarian opportunities such as the North Fulton Community Charities, Foster Care Support Foundation, while facilitating anti-bullying workshops in local schools such as Northwood Elementary, Crabapple Middle School, and the Cottage School. And whereas Up With People will perform their concert entitled The Journey on Saturday, August 15th at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. at the Lassiter Concert Hall in Marietta. And proceeds from the concert will benefit our local North Fulton charities. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim August 10th through August 17th as Up With People Week, and call upon all the citizens of Roswell to acknowledge the talented men and women who bring charitable goodwill to every location they visit, locally and internationally, and encourage them to volunteer to be a host family. So let's have one more hand for host, the Up With People. Thank you for coming. So that's all the fun stuff, gentlemen. You're welcome to stick around for the meeting, but it goes downhill from here. Do we have a motion to approve the nomination of? Do we have a motion to approve the nomination of Marie Wilsley to the Planning Commission? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Eichelhart. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise their hands. That's unanimous. Tonight we have one council member absent. Councilmember Wynn is absent with a excuse, and of course we're down to 5 council members. The first thing on the agenda is the Administration and Finance Department, so I'll call upon our liaison to that department, Councilmember Ken Eichelhart, to read that calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item is the approval for the mayor and our city administrator to sign a contract with Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association Management Corporation for development and implementation of a risk and safety program not to exceed $55,000 and approval of a budget amendment in the amount of $55,000. And Mr. Fisher will explain that.
Thank you, Councilmember Eichelhart. This is indeed for PMAMC to really augment and help strengthen the safety program, risk program that we currently have. It provides for 480 hours of on-site training, augmentation, development of our programs. There are specific deliverables that we will be receiving. You've seen them in your packet, but it's comprehensive safety policies, program guidelines that will be written out, ongoing training programs for the employees and for management to be able to continue the training, job safety analysis, physical demands analysis, development of an accident investigation policy. Right now we have the police department does investigations, but we don't have a citywide policy for how we look at accidents, particularly vehicle accidents, and what we can learn from those and how we can help to mitigate those in the future. And then, as I said, training for the supervisors and the supporting training documents so that we can have an ongoing program that we can administer and that we can manage here in-house after the 480 hours of augmentation that they provide.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the first reading? No, excuse me. Move to approve.
Contract.
Motion approved by Councilmember Eichelhart. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience have any questions? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The next is the first reading of the approval to amend Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3.4, Location of Sales of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to allow for certain distances from churches and schools for grocery stores.
Thank you, Councilmember Eichelhart. This is a first reading. House Bill 85 actually was one that was passed in the last legislation that deals with alcohol and the distance from schools and churches that it can reside at before it can be sold. It also, in House Bill 85, defines a grocery store and how that is to be treated as far as the sale of its alcohol. And basically, it's what it says, it's not prohibited within this as long as the grocery store meets our zoning requirements. So this amendment to our ordinance basically aligns the city ordinance with the new state ordinance.
Mr. Davidson, if you'd read the ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3.4, Location of Sales of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3.4, Location of Sales of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting Section 3.4.2, distances from churches, schools, etc., by deleting subsection A in its entirety and replacing said subsection with the following, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first reading.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Eichelhart to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Any further discussion by council? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fisher, the way this is written, it appears that there is no distance requirement at all. Is that
For the groceries?
Grocery stores are excluded from the distance requirement.
Yes, sir, that's correct. As long as they fit within the zoning that is currently for a grocery store and it fits within the size of what the building should be, there's no distance listed in the legislation for that grocery store.
Okay. And that's the same as the state regulation?
Correct. We're trying to align ours with theirs. That's what they put out.
So they have just carved that out. Do we have grocery store defined in the code as a specific defined use?
We do not. It's by the size according to Ms. Wakefield. So it doesn't specifically say grocery store, but it's the size of the building that they can be put in.
Okay, so the definition that we essentially have in the ordinance, the 10,000 square feet, and this percentage has to be committed to.
It's like
food,
85% is of the square foot.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is approval to amend Chapter 10, Licenses, Taxes, and Business Regulations of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to regulate where consumer fireworks can be sold, to provide for temporary retail structures and special use permits for fireworks. The first reading.
Thank you, Councilmember Eichelhart. This again is another legislation that was passed this last year, House Bill 110. It allows for fireworks to be used throughout the state of Georgia and to be sold. They can be used from 10 a.m. until 12 midnight and from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. on January 1st, July 3rd, July 4th, and December 31st. The amendment also to this ordinance specifies where fireworks can be sold, and in our new UDC, that would be in CX, CC, and CH. And there are permits that they would buy to put those temporary sites in, or the sites for selling the fireworks. And if they want to change the time from what is currently listed, they would have to have a special use permit.
So this is mandated by the state.
It is. We're trying to get ours in line with what the state has passed. The times
Davidson, would
included.
you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 10, Licenses, Taxes, and Business Regulations of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell regarding fireworks. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 10, Licenses, Taxes, and Business Regulations of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by adding thereto a new Article 10.16 to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. If approved, this is the first reading of the ordinance.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Question by Councilmember Orleans. First of all, there's a motion by Councilmember Eichelhart. There's a question by Councilmember Orleans. Councilmember Orleans.
Mr. Fisher, on the cost for license, $500 per location and license good for 90 days, is there a minimum separation time between those permits, or could they renew it immediately on the 91st day for another 90 days, or what?
90 calendar days, and it's $500 for each 90 days. There's no time in between, unless I haven't read something. I don't think there's any time in between the 90 days, is there? It's just $500 for 90 days.
So they could keep signing up every 90 days and continue it. And as was stated, this is legislation that's really being dictated by the state, and I was glad to see in the paper that some of the representatives are reconsidering some of the points in this, because we're having to follow their lead on this, and there's several points that I don't think we'd be in agreement with, so as far as the timing and maybe the temporary location. So I'm glad that our state legislature is going to reconsider this for the next session to maybe make some changes. So thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a second? Councilmember DiPolito has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fisher, just for clarification purposes, the law has two components to it. One is for retail sales, and the other is for the use of the fireworks themselves. So,
Correct.
as far as using fireworks, what can the average citizen expect as a result of this?
The fireworks can be used. There's a timing issue for when they can be used, and then there's also a special event, a special permit they can get if they want to use it outside of that time. So the time is 10 a.m. to 12 midnight on any given day that they're allowed to use those fireworks. On certain holidays, 4th of July, January 1st, July 3rd, July 4th, and December 31st, they can use them from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m., so it's a little bit later on those days. If somebody wants to use it outside of those hours, they have to come forth and apply for a special permit, and that'd be $100 for each event.
And that applies to anybody who wants to set off fireworks, whether they're a resident, a business,
Correct, to use the
organization.
fireworks.
Okay, so if someone is having some sort of a special event, and they wanted to have some fireworks at the end, and if it went past the hours, they could apply for a permit. And
Correct.
And then have the ability to do so.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Passes unanimously.
And in the last one, at least for today, dealing with state issues that have been passed down to us, is the approval for a resolution establishing a procurement card policy for elected officials. And will it Mr. Lee, follow through on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Earhart. Good evening, Mayor and Council. What I have before you tonight is in response to House Bill 192, which was passed by the Georgia Legislature in 2015, signed into law by our governor and takes effect January 1st of 2016. This particular law creates new rules for elected officials with purchase cards, or P cards, if you will. The city of Roswell has always had a purchasing card policy, so this is just, we have to create one specific for elected officials. That's what I have before you tonight. This policy sets the limits for elected officials at $2,500 per single transaction, as well as $5,000 for the total card. It also establishes what the cards may be used for. It includes training, education, travel, community events, hospitality, professional organizations. It also establishes what is prohibited to be purchased. That's on page 7 of the policy. This policy has to be in place before January 1st of 2016. Otherwise, we can't allow you to use your cards that we've issued you. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve the adoption of the state policy, which has been mandated. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which I skipped over?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Eichelhart to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Orleans. Anyone in the audience have any questions? Councilmember Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have one change on page 40. I made a misstatement about a quarter mile from a point, and I'd like to adjust it to a half mile. My family was in the audience and corrected me afterwards, so I just need to make that adjustment. I'm sorry? In the minutes. Yes, in the minutes, sorry, of June 22nd, page 40 of 56.
Motion to approve with that amendment?
Motion to approve with the revision suggested by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Any other questions from the council or the audience? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. At this time, we'll call on the Community Development Department. I think Councilmember Becky Wynn has asked Councilmember Diamond to call that item.
Thank you, sir. This item is approval of an amendment for section 8.3.13, enforcement of state minimum fire safety standards of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances regarding the designation of handicapped parking spaces, and this would be the second reading. Ms. Wakefield.
Okay, thank you. Yes, as was stated, this is the second reading of amendment to section 8.3.13 for the enforcement of the minimum fire safety standards as it relates to handicapped parking spaces. The current ordinance gives that designation to the code enforcement officer, and it should be the chief building official. So this is just a clarification that we're asking to be corrected.
So we're not changing the rule, we're just changing the person that
Yes,
makes
sir.
the
That's
decision.
correct. Yes, sir.
Does the council have any other questions? Do we have a motion? Well, we need to read it first.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend section 8.3.13, enforcement of state minimum fire safety standards of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell to amend Chapter 8, Section 8.3.13, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and have approved this as the second reading.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve second reading.
Motion by Councilmember Diamond for approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhart. Anyone in the audience have any questions? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time, we'll call upon liaison of the Public Safety Department, Councilmember Jerry Orleans.
Thank you. First item on our agenda tonight is approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract with Safe Kids Worldwide to form a local coalition called Safe Kids North Fulton. And here to tell us about having safer kids is Chief Ricky Burnett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm here tonight to ask for the approval to sign the contract between Safe Kids Worldwide and Safe Kids North Fulton, in which Roswell will be the lead agency on. I also have a verbal commitment from the other fire chiefs with the other cities in North Fulton County to participate in this program. Safe Kids North Fulton will focus on bike safety, water safety, pedestrian safety, child seat safety, fire safety, and home safety. This will be handled by Chris Cooper, who is within our Community Risk Reduction Division, and it will greatly enhance the service that we provide to our community. Thank you.
So we already have the staffing to do this, and we have similar programs. We're simply...
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We already have the
coalitions
staff in place, and we are doing a good bit of this. Safe Kids Worldwide just provides a greater amount of resources for us to pull from.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion? Motion for approval by Councilmember Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Is anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. At this time, well, Councilmember Orleans has one other item.
Yes.
Profane language.
Next item is approval of an amendment to delete Section 13.1.1B14, use of profane language of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, and this will be the first reading by the City Attorney.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to repeal Section 13.1.1B14, use of profane language considered to be disorderly conduct of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council provide as follows. Section 13.1.1B14 of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances is hereby repealed in its entirety. The remaining sections of Section 13.1.1 remain in full force and effect, and have approved this to be the first reading.
Mr. Davis, I understand you're recommending this amendment?
Yes, sir, I am.
And the reason?
First Amendment concerns, sir.
So there is, we're concerned that the current ordinance is not enforceable.
That is correct.
And has been so pointed out by a judge.
Several cases, yes, sir.
So this, again, this is the mandated night. We're cleaning things up. Is there a motion to approve?
Chief, you got any additional comments?
I don't.
Just keep it clean.
Kind of an easy slam dunk for you right here.
I totally concur with Mr. Davidson's assessment.
Very good. I move for approval.
Motion for approval by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Further discussion? Councilmember DePolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question. I assume if this is for, well, let me rethink the way I want to pose this question. When we have an instance where somebody is becoming problematic and they might be using profane language as part of that, I assume that, does that become more of a disorderly conduct kind of, if somebody is unruly, what ordinance do we have to try to control that?
First of all, if you'll define unruly in your policeman language for Councilmember DePolito, so we're clear what unruly means.
Simple verbalization is not necessarily unruly behavior. There's drawn a distinction between their behaviors and their verbal, what they're saying out loud. They can essentially say what they want as long as it's not raising an alarm or something in public. But if they're acting out, offering violence, putting people in fear, then certainly then we approach the level of disorderly conduct and we'll charge them appropriately in that manner.
Councilmember Davidson, would you wish to add to that?
Not council member, but
City Attorney.
Subsection A of 13.1.1 still says that it's unlawful for any person to disturb or endanger the public peace or decency by any disorderly conduct. So if they're loud and boisterous and cussing, we could still cite them under that.
Okay, but if somebody is just
They're just
using-
cussing, sir, then,
just cussing, there's,
Right.
okay. So that's what this is meant to alleviate that concern.
that's right. We're looking at enforcing against their behaviors, acting out, as opposed to just saying something.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Orleans.
I think that, Mr. Davidson, I think that's also covered under item 7, under section B. Would that not also come into play?
It absolutely could, yes.
Yeah, I think it's covered in other spots. It's just, as Chief said, somebody just standing there and using the words without really creating conflict, although many times those words do create conflict. Thank you. Move for approval.
Motion for approval by Councilmember Orleans. Is there a second? It already has a second? There was a motion and a second already. All right. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience have any questions? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll call upon liaison to the Transportation Department, Councilmember Nancy Diamond.
Thank you, sir. This is approval of an amendment to section 22.6.1, speed limits appendix of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinance. If approved, this would be the first reading. And should I start with Mr. Davidson?
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the Roswell City Council setting speed limits on certain streets. Now therefore, to accomplish the foregoing, the mayor and council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. Chapter 22, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is amended by deleting therefrom Article 22.6, Speed Limits Appendix, and substituting in lieu thereof a new Article 22.6 to read as set forth in the appendix attached here to and incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first reading of the ordinance.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve and request that second reading be moved up to August 10th. So we can go ahead and get this done as
We have a
quickly as
motion
possible.
to approve and to include the second reading on August 10th by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. So what streets are we changing speed limits on, and what changes are we making?
So we requested this to GDOT back in January, and we have their response, and the only change we're going to make is for the new school zone that's being built on Highway 9.
So in effect, we're putting a school zone on Highway 9 for the new school.
Yes, we are establishing.
And that's the only speed limit that we're changing within the city.
That is the only change they approved.
All right, did we request others?
Yes, we requested 3 more.
We requested to lower the speed limit?
Yes, at 3 other locations.
And what were the locations they denied?
Highway 9, the Midtown area, Riverside from Highway 9 to Dogwood, and Eatrice Road from Hardscrabble to Cox Road.
So down along the river, we tried to lower the speed limit, but they turned us down.
Yes.
We'll have to talk with Mr. Burkhalter. Do we have a motion? Did we get a motion? Councilmember Diamond.
I'd like to comment on what your comment was. The theme of tonight seems to be state versus local control. And this is an area that is a real concern to me, that we repeatedly, year after year, ask for reductions on speed limits on our streets, and we are routinely refused by the state. And I just think that is the ultimate in local control. Why we can't control the speed on our own city streets, I do not understand. So I'm open to suggestions on how we make.
Well, I think we start with our GDOT representative and ask his advice on how to proceed.
Well, given that we've gone from January to today and we still don't have this particular approval in written form, I'm assuming we're going to have that by our second reading. I'm hopeful we will, but our staff, I think, has done all they can do. And
Are we in touch with Mr. Burkhalter, or do we believe we need to enlist his help?
Yes, I do. Steve's shaking his head.
Well, if it looks like we're running close, we will. But let's put on the list for our next meeting with our GDOT representative, Mr. Burkhalter, who's doing a great job for us.
Yes.
That looking at speed limits. So we haven't taken a vote yet, have we?
No.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. As far as the school zone is concerned, Mr. Ralph, is this as long as we can make this school zone? It would seem to me that if somebody's coming down Alpharetta Highway, they're going to be picking up speed going down the hill from Holcomb Bridge, and I'd be more comfortable if we could make it longer and reduce the speed sooner as you get closer.
Yeah, like the whole length.
Can we do it from Holcomb Bridge to Norcross?
Yeah, we follow the criteria, and we submit the request based on how long we want it to be, and that is based on the field study that we conduct. So we submitted some specific lengths north and south of the school boundary, and that's what we have verbal approval for. We are still waiting for a final written approval.
So you're comfortable that this will reduce traffic enough before people get to the school?
This is based on what we suggested based on our field study, so yes, I am comfortable with the way we suggested and got it approved verbally.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Which brings us to our city attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item I have is a resolution instituting a new temporary moratorium on the acceptance of temporary sign permit applications for all properties within the city of Roswell. As you recall, the Mayor and Council adopted a moratorium on June 22nd prohibiting the acceptance, processing, or reviewing of applications for all signage or for digital and or refacing of existing signage within the city of Roswell. This amended moratorium is more narrowly tailored to address concerns about temporary signs that were brought up in the United States Supreme Court case of Reed versus the Town of Gilbert. This revision will allow the permanent signage to still be permitted, but it will still prohibit temporary signage until such time as we can change the ordinance.
So we're going to be permitting permanent signs under our current under the prior ordinance. We're going back to what we had.
Correct, correct.
Any other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that we're removing the restriction on permanent signs. For temporary signs, what would be included in that? Is it banners, real estate signs? Is there a list of items included?
They're all in the ordinance under temporary signs. It is real estate signs, it's banners, it's grand opening signs. And most of them are described by what they say, which was the problem in the case. So they're based on content, so we have to find a way to allow the temporary signage, but not base it on content.
And we have some, there are the real estate signs that people put out for like open houses or yards and stuff like that, which are truly temporary. But then there are leasing signs that are semi-temporary, where people put up a 4x8 sign and posts in the ground, and sometimes those never go away. They're kind of there indefinitely. Is that included as a temporary sign, or
those under our ordinance are temporary signs?
Those are temporary signs.
I'm trying to come up with some way to regulate them, to allow them and not base it on content. But you're dealing with grand opening signs versus, real estate signs. It is just going to be difficult. But it's nationwide, so we're all working on the same issue right now.
Right. When do we expect or hope to have some sort of a resolution to that?
Hopefully by September, I can have an ordinance to you. I've done a couple of webinars already, been in contact with the International Municipal Lawyers Association. I don't know if it's as easy as putting a clarification in our language that's already out there, or making it purpose-driven instead of what the sign says. So I'm kind of working every angle I can to get it to where they're allowed but regulated.
So we potentially may need to restructure that section of the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve the resolution? Councilmember Orleans.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davidson, the real estate signs on properties, they're included?
Yes.
So nobody can put their house up for sale and put a sign on their property, theoretically?
anything that they have to get a permit for.
Well, I thought
so right
those-
now, they don't have to get a permit for a real estate sign in front of your yard.
Right.
But like a commercial facility that has big signs out there for lease, they have to get permits.
Okay.
So-
I just want to make sure that's what you were saying, because the real estate signs on somebody's residence does not need a permit, so those are okay.
So right now, we don't require permits for those, so they're
Okay.
free to.
Just want to clarify that, because we got calls last time, and I want to make sure we don't get calls again this time.
He's safe with his
Yeah,
yard sign.
political signs are fine.
Political signs are fine?
Any other questions? Did we get a motion? Motion for approval by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience have any questions? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Now we have a recommendation for closure. Discuss personnel, litigation, real estate. Do we have a motion for closure? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito, second by Councilmember Diamond. All in favor, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We are adjourned. I like you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, can you sign that right quick, please?